Here is a band from Liverpool from the late 70s who put out 3 albums totaling roughly 35 songs. I believe they had about 36 songs in their catalog. And they had 3 vocalists, one of whom only got to sing lead on 5 of them. And it was a shame. And as much as I love their albums, it was a shame that we got to hear so little of her. I'm talking about singer Bette Bright and the band in question, Deaf School, the first 9-piece, then 8-piece band from Liverpool, England, that put out 3 albums on Warner Brothers between 1976 and 1978. Here from the 3rd album, the one that features the most of her, the album English Boys, Working Girls from 1978, sort of candlelight number on side 2, sort of a lounge ballad, the track Morning After. This song is written by Clive Lange and Steve Allen. Steve Allen, who in the band performs as Enrico Cadillac, the main lead vocalist, and Clive Lange is the guitarist and the main writer for the band, who would go on to become more of a producer after the band folded. Very, very talented song craftsman, though, of his generation.
What did I do? What did I say? How did I get this way?
I like how her voice has this mix of kind of like exhaustion, yet it's sort of eroticized at the same time. And as we are soon to find out, this song is about sexual regret. So she's kind of sexed up, yet she's sorrowful at the same time. And her vocals are kind of mixing those 2 emotions.
Don't open the windows. Don't turn on the lights. This is the morning after the night, and I too bad.
The title Morning After, in the biography on the band, one of the members stated that it was inspired by the band's experiences touring America in the summer of 1977, where the members had many morning afters.
What did I do? What did I say? How did I get this way? What did I drink? What did they think?
She's attributing her behavior to alcohol.
How can I face this day? Help me, please. How can I do this to me?
How can I do this to me? What is this? Who is he? Who could it be? And why is he here with me? So that's the most telltale line. She's woken up next to a stranger, and she doesn't remember what they did the night before because she was so intoxicated. Beautiful, kind of jazzy interlude here. I love the emotion she put into the climax of the song where she was saying, like, can't take any more. I should add that in addition to regret, kind of sexualized regret, still being kind of in that sexed up mood. I should add well, not really inebriated, hungover. That's the other predicament. She's hungover. She's been kind of sexed up, and she's regretting it all because she, her inhibitions were down due to the state that she was in, and consequently she can't really remember the details. All she does know is that she wouldn't have done it had she not been under the influence. But stories like that, I guess, were quite common back in that era, 1977, 78. This album, English Boys Working Girls, which came out in early 1978, I believe, was recorded late in 77, had a few kind of newsworthy reference points. There's one song on the album, What a Week, that mentions events that were going on the week that they were, around the time that they were touring the States. In particular, there's a reference to the New York blackout of 1977. There's also a reference to Elvis Presley's death. So I guess they were there in New York, maybe playing several gigs, like at the Bottom Line or Max's, like between like the weekend in July of that year when the lights went out for, what was it, 12 hours, 15 hours, and the August 11th when Elvis Presley died, or they may have been a little bit further on tour by then, but because you didn't have to be in New York to experience that. There is another song on there titled Ronnie Zamora, which deals with which is named after this teenage killer, this boy who killed his elderly neighbor and tried to make the alibi that he couldn't have been over next door shooting her because he was watching a TV show when it occurred. And I guess his trial was the first ever trial broadcast on TV in the days before, like, court TV, that is. Strangely, there's very little. That incident was once included in this in like this People magazine list of of landmark television events, like this 1989 list they made of memorable moments in television history. And today, I can barely find a single mention of the Ronnie Zamora case online. Um, and there's a song on here called "Fire," which I believe was about the Kentucky nightclub fire from that occurred on May 28th, 1977. Very close to my fourth birthday, as a matter of fact. I guess the deadliest fire in the United States, right behind the 1942 Coconut Grove fire. Yeah. So it's almost, this album is almost like a catalog of newsworthy events from that time. If you're kind of like a news trivia history buff from this period, there's a lot of interesting reference points in these songs. And so the song we heard, Morning After, kind of a candlelight ballad or a morning after ballad, sung in that sort of tragic lounge singer mode by co-vocalist Betty Bright, who didn't get many lead vocals in the band, unfortunately. Although the songs are great as they are, so it's only a half complaint. And with backing vocals by Enrico Cadillac, aka Steve Allen, and Eric Shark, and horns by Ian Ritchie. We heard some saxophone on there, always credited as reeds on Discogs. Bass by Steve Lindsey, who would go on to head another band called The Planets for a couple of albums, and written by guitarist Clive Lange, the creative force behind the band, who would go on to front the boxes and become the production mastermind behind Madness. Madness were very influenced by Deaf School, and kind of almost became a proxy of the whole Deaf School influence to a wider audience. And Madness frontman Suggs would ultimately marry Betty Bright in 1981. She would put out one solo album, a couple of singles, and then one solo album, Rhythm Breaks the Ice, in 1981, before ultimately just retiring to the domestic life. Although until like years later, when Deaf School reformed, it's kind of like a local stage act. And drums by Tim Whitaker, and keyboards by Max Ripple. It was always kind of frustrating back in the day, like back in the 90s when I was really on my honeymoon with Deaf School. I discovered the band like in 94, and they were like my favorite band for like 2 years. The frustrating thing was that about 4 of the members I couldn't quite match the names to, because they were never identified on the album sleeves. It was just like 8 people, and it was obvious who Betty Bright was, and it was kind of obvious who Clive Lange was. But Deaf School, great band. Arguably the most important band to emerge from Liverpool after You Know Who. And they were the first significant band to emerge from a Merseyside town really since the mid-60s. But there were some good bands from that Liverpool scene from around, just starting up around that time, like Nuts. And then a few years later we would have like Echo and the Bunnymen, the Yachts, and then in the 80s, the Lotus Eaters. Anyway, for more Rubies and Sapphires from Deaf School, from the 3 Deaf School albums of the 70s, and from other English D acts, see the directory of albums by English D artists in the description. Until next time, this is Zaragon, the world's most ear-travel tri-maximalist, signing off.